Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Lindsay. This is Linda's Investing, and today I bring you another guest from my community, one rental at a time. This is Mr. Frank Contreras from All Guy REI, and he's been one of our mentors in our community. And I bring you because he has so much wisdom, and so I'll let him introduce himself. Hi, Frank. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Lindsay. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm always excited to get to speak with you. I've learned a lot from you too, by the way, so I appreciate that. My wife and I got started or tried to get started investing in real estate several years ago, back in like 2007 or so, and that was just before the crash. And we got into it without any experience or knowledge at the time, and back then they were I was able to get a couple of loans. We pulled a little bit of equity out of our primary residence at the time, and they were doing like stated income loans. You could just basically tell them how much you made and you could qualify without any problem. I fell into two bad loans. We were able to buy a couple of properties close to us. We're on the Central Coast in California near Santa Cruz, and we bought a couple of properties in Sacramento, which was a couple hours away from us. And we we were able to hang on to those until the loans adjusted. After the first year, the loans adjusted, and um, when we first bought the places, we were able to cover the mortgages. But I didn't think about anything else. Like, we did have a property manager, we did have some expenses that came up. But once those interest rates adjusted, we were negative, and we were able to hang on for about a year, and then we ended up losing those properties, and we ended up going through bankruptcy in 2010. So that I lost a lot of sleep during that time because I was just so worried. I was working, I'm a contractor, I was working really hard to try to keep up with everything, but we just couldn't do it. So we ended up losing those properties, and then it took a while. Like I've said before, you might have heard me say before that I didn't really have like a retirement account or anything um, for what if I ever got to retire. So I was getting a little bit nervous at the time. I was probably 47 or so. I'm 61 today, and in 2019, I was just looking for a way to build some kind of a retirement savings. And I think you had Mikey on before too, and you and Mikey kind of talked about the same thing where you were looking into 401ks and trying to get as much money in there as possible. But then, like you guys, I realized that wasn't going to be built up fast enough. And real estate was always in the back of my mind. So in 2019, I found Bigger Pockets. And from there, just started diving in really heavy because it seemed like real estate was going to be the way to create a retirement for myself. Through that process, I ended up watching an interview with um, Brandon and David, and David Green was a police officer trying to do the same thing, build a portfolio and try to retire from that work. And from there, things just grew. We found Michael Zuber used to write for Bigger Pockets. Now he's the main guy for One Rental at a Time, and we started following Michael, and through him, we ended up finding a turnkey promoter that was also writing for Bigger Pockets. Her name's Allie Boone, and she was working with turnkey providers in the Midwest. And we thought that might be an easy way for us to get in. The turnkey model is pretty simple. They buy homes, rehab the homes, and then sell them to investors. Back then, they were doing it and they would have a tenant in place already. So the place was cash flowing before you bought it. And so that's the way we got in. We bought our first place in 2021, which was a triplex in Missouri. And that was a turnkey. Um, we ended up picking up a couple of other turnkeys before we started buying off the MLS, and we have kind of settled in Missouri, in St. Louis, Missouri, with 3 or 4 properties there. So now today we have 7 properties for 10 doors, and it took us about 4 years to get there. But like we've had some challenges, so we're it hasn't been
Not a real
perfect, I
estate
should say.
story without its challenges, right?
Yeah, we've learned that. And you think, the concept is simple, right? You buy a place and place a tenant, and it's supposed to just work out. Although you do need, when you analyze your properties, you want to definitely make sure you're able to set aside for maintenance and vacancy and capex items and things like that. That was one thing I really missed the first time around. I had no idea that I needed to set money aside for those things, and it blew up in my face.
Yeah, those are things that by reading and researching, that's something that you learn, but it's not I don't feel like it's common knowledge because even when you hear things from like the real estate bigger pockets, like bigger podcast people assume that okay, if you can rent something like the 1% rule, if you buy something for 100K and then you could rent it for $1,000, I'm cash flowing. But that might have been the case in 2020 when the interest rates were like below 3%, but no longer the case. I think like you and I know. For example, like if you were to buy something for 100K now, it most likely will not cash flow and then rent it for $1,000. But yeah, those are things that without knowing that you got into it and then figure it out later. But what I wanted to ask you was that because you started investing in real estate in your backyard, how did you come up with, oh, I'm gonna do out of state now?
Yeah, it was a kind of a tough decision in on one hand because, like I said, I'm a contractor, so I wanted to go back to wherever, Missouri or wherever we were buying, and do the work myself. But for me, that meant leaving my work here, losing money here in California to go spend more money in Missouri. It was kind of hard. But I like the idea of the turnkey because they rehab a lot of times. When they do rehabs there, they'll do a new roof, they'll do, kitchens, bathrooms, flooring, and paint, and make the place nice again. And we were able to get into our first property for about 40,000. And here in California, that wouldn't have gone very far. So we took a chance and um, bought a few. And I think, like I've mentioned before, the first couple of years were pretty good. Our third year was really hard. 2024 was really tough on us because we ended up putting a lot of money into the properties, finding out things we didn't know because we haven't gone back there to look at our properties. We haven't seen any of our properties to this day. And, some of our mentors kind of nudged me because I should go back there and at least make sure there's a house there. But we were confident because we were able to get inspections and everything, right? We had our agent, we had the inspector, we had our insurance companies. Of course, they're not going to insure something that's not there.
Title
So,
companies, the pictures, the videos. I think
yeah.
that's the most nerve-wracking thing when you tell somebody, yeah, I invest out of state, and like, oh, you must have family there, or you must go there all the time. And like you, Frank, you haven't touched, you haven't gone to any of your markets, right? And I believe Frank, the financial firefighter, also hasn't like gone to any of his properties. And yeah, that's crazy because you have to rely, like you say you're a contractor, you have to rely on other people and you have to be on other people's time. And for that, for many people, that's they cannot do that. They cannot let go of that control. Like, I need to do things because I know better. But sometimes we don't know better,
Mm.
right? When I talk to my property manager, every single time I talk to her, she is a well of knowledge. I'm like, oh, you do this also? Like, I didn't understand. And then all those things you learn, especially if you don't have any experience in real estate, doing rentals, your family's never done it, you don't come from a business that deals with tenants and broken toilets and anything, you don't know. Many of these scenarios are new to you. So for me to like let go of control with somebody that's specialized in those specialties, like dealing with tenants, signing leases, starting eviction process, like I don't know those things. So I'm not gonna assume that I'm gonna do it better than somebody that works at it for a living. And I think that's why a lot of people get caught up when they think, oh, investing out of state, it must be so difficult, so hard. How do you feel like your journey investing out of state with property managers has been?
I think it's been a mixed bag because we have had to fire two property managers. And I tried to do the best that I could when picking the property management companies. The first one I I hired because they were managing a property in Texas for my mom, and it was a franchise. So I just thought, they did a good job for her there. I would try them first for our triplex in Missouri, but they were kind of far from the property. They were like 45 minutes away. They weren't, they were kind of batching calls, and they would only go there when they had a few things to look at versus just mine. And that didn't work out well. When they got to the point where they were going to start showing the property to rent it, they weren't, they were going out maybe once a week or, sporadically. So that didn't work out well. And luckily, we found another property manager that was more local to our property. And he was, I didn't even sign up with him. And to this day, we're with him. And I think he's amazing. But I started an application online or looking for information or something, and his company popped up, and I didn't finish the application. So he called me a few days later and said, "Hey, I noticed you were doing this. Can I help you with something?" And I let him know our situation. And it was like, I think it was January, it was snowing and everything there. And he went to the property and looked at it and said, "Hey, I think the property's nice. I think you can make some money with it. And I can help you if you like." So we fired our other property manager and we started with him. And he had the place filled within a month.
Mhm.
And he's been really good. One of my big things with property managers is the lack of communication, and he's really good at that. I can text him, email him, and he gets right back to me. We talk about how I would like things done when they're doing any work on the property,
Mhm.
and I've been able to. I wouldn't say I've trained our other property managers, but it's kind of that idea. You let them know, I do have experience, so this is the kind of vanity I want, or this is the faucet I want, or this is the kind of paint we use, things like that. And they'll let me talk with them, and they'll understand what I'm looking for. And they're happy to do it, if they know what you want. Um, so that's been a good experience. And I get kind of heckled a little bit by Dion because we're in, four different markets. And he just had a guest on his show last night that is in multiple markets as well. And they brought up the point that if you're in different markets, you have, maybe different rules for different cities or counties, or property managers use different software and you have to learn four or five different softwares, things like that. And I guess I didn't know any better. So that's how I learned. And I'm just been really lucky at getting them to communicate with me. I'll just bother them as much as I need to until they respond. And then
Exactly.
and then we start talking on a regular basis. So um, property management has probably been one of the bigger challenges to learn.
Mhm. To learn how to communicate with them,
Mhm.
or how to teach them to communicate with you. I think Michael Stewart said something very interesting last time he had his Zoom call questions and answers in school. And he said that what he does with the property managers, like every week they have a scheduled phone call. And if there is no arisings, his phone calls like 30 seconds maybe. Hi, how are you doing? How are my properties doing? Anything happened since last week? No, nothing happened. Okay, click. But he said, I do not miss those weekly phone calls because I don't want to let my property manager know that I'm not invested in my market. And I never thought about it like that. Like you need to let them know that you are continuously looking at this because this is your business. This is your livelihood. I mean, for him, he's at the point that he's retired from his rental, so it is his livelihood, right? For us, we're still learning and growing. Um, but that was very interesting to me. I don't think I do that weekly, but I think I might start doing it. What do you think about that? What he said?
Uh, it's funny that you mentioned that because the guest that Deanna had last night does the same thing, but they Zuber and the the man I'm talking about, his name is Justin Cambra,
Mhm.
and they have hundreds of units, right? So of course the property manager is going to drop everything for them. I think for us, I we have one in Illinois, we have one in Gary, we have three in St. Louis, so we don't carry a lot of weight.
Mhm.
One thing that has helped us in Wisconsin specifically, Justin had referred us to a new property manager for our Milwaukee duplex, and I threw his name around. I said, "Hey, I'm a friend of Justin's, because Justin had 80 units with them, and even on some of the calls, when I'm introduced to, say, the leasing agent or the maintenance guy or whoever, they'll say, "Hey, this is Frank. He's a friend of Justin's," and then I feel like I have 80 units. So, so it's been helpful. I haven't found that kind of connection in the other markets yet,
Mhm.
but I, I don't know how. I think most of our property managers would be okay chatting with me once a week. So I think it's worth a try. I know your property manager there in Gary specifically. She sounds super busy, and I guess they all are, depending how many properties they manage for us. But you're right. I think most people they deal with are just, here's my property. You take care of it. I don't want to have to deal with anything. They get that a lot. That's probably what they're used to. But
Mhm.
then when they hear you calling them and you just want to check in and say, hey, have there been any maintenance issues this week? I think they'll be pretty receptive to that. And they would probably get used to it. I don't think they're really bothered by it because you're not just calling for, random miscellaneous things,
Mhm.
not a bother, but you just want to work with them to manage. And I told some of our people, we're really counting on you to help protect our investment,
Mhm.
and just let me know whatever you need from me to be able to do that, effectively, and they'll have a bit more respect for you and your needs.
Right, right. I understand that completely. Um, yes. I think now that I think about it, I think I came referred to this property manager by two people already. So maybe that carry a little bit of more weight in my relationship. That started my relationship with this property manager, which I think lack of communications, it's been a problem in the past, but we resolved it. Like basically, like you said, like I do want to be aware of everything that's going on, and if you have any questions you can text me, you can call me. If I don't answer like right away, if you leave me a text, I'll get back to you between the next hour or so.
Yeah, that's been one of the other challenges, the time difference, right? Because you're in California too, so sometimes I'll wake up here at 6 o'clock and it's already 8 o'clock there. So maybe they sent me a message and they're waiting for an answer. So I
Mhm.
need to maybe wake up a little bit early so I don't miss those messages if they
Mhm.
need me to make a decision on something. But you brought up a good point because I know um, I went to Gary and got a turnkey because of Millennial Mike, right?
Mhm.
And I know you know him and you probably follow him as well. So so Mike has, say, 20 to 30 properties, but the person he followed in had like 80. So that 80 plus Mike's 30, that's a good amount. So if you follow in on their coattails and say, hey, these guys told me you're the best,
Mhm.
this is what I need, can you help me? Then that carries a lot of weight. And I think it's good because you do have some other properties, but you're building a good portfolio in Gary. So I think that connection with those guys could be helpful to you.
Right. Which is something that I do advise people that are getting into a market, find somebody else that is already in the market doing successfully. And it doesn't have to be like the same strategy that you're doing, like short term, mid term, long term, whatever, anybody, because that person may need another, might know another person that's doing what you're doing,
Mhm.
and they can connect you. And I didn't know about networking. I don't know if that was networking me back in the day, but that's how I got all my referrals, and that's how I bet them. And like Mike says, copy and paste basically. Like you don't get rewards to copy and paste when you're in school, but when you're in real life, and if you're following somebody else's, it's not what you know, it's who you know, basically. And then if you just hold on to like your network of people that are already investing, then you're probably gonna be okay, and you're gonna avoid all the mistakes that they did when they were doing it by themselves.
Yeah, I think networking has been a really good thing. Um, and before we got started, back in 2007, there wasn't a lot of YouTube or Zoom or any of that stuff. I think we could have done a lot better if it had been around, and maybe we wouldn't have lost those properties, and we'd be what almost 20 years into it
Mhm.
by now. Um, but I am thankful that we were able to get started again because you've probably heard me say it. Being 60 now, and my wife and I are about the same age, we're closer to retirement age. Um, so I think instead of thinking of it negatively, like I missed out on 20 years, I have to appreciate the fact that we were able to get started again. And we're not going to retire early because we're already there, but we will be able to retire, because of the small portfolio that we're building. I think if we had to rely on Social Security or, whatever little bit we have in a retirement account, that would have been really devastating. But, uh, um, and you've maybe have heard us talk about leaving California, taking our equity from our home here and buying something somewhere else so that we could get rid of our mortgage. That's really our biggest bill. And saving that about $3,000 a month,
Mhm.
along with a portfolio, that will definitely give us some options.
Right, right. It does make sense. So, Frank, I was going to ask you, how do you fund your deals currently?
Well, I mentioned earlier that we kind of settled in St. Louis. Um, we talked about bigger pockets earlier, and we had gone to St. Louis because the property manager that I mentioned that we really like for our triplex, that's in St. Joseph, Missouri, and the person that trained him is a property manager in St. Louis. So we were actually looking for properties just because of the property manager. That if you can find a good one, that's a really great way to start. So it took us about a year, but we found a property that we liked. We I think we checked in with the listing agent, and it turned out that she was both affiliated. She was an agent on Bigger Pockets, and she was an agent affiliated with another group that we belong to. It's called Addicted to ROI. So with her being in those two groups, and those two groups really hold their people accountable, they have agents, lenders, PMs, and different things like that. So because she was in both, I had confidence already that she had to be good, right? Or she wouldn't be in those groups. So we bought our first property with her, and then found out that she is an investor also in St. Louis. She has properties of her own. So we really relied on her, and we bought two more with her. And then, of course, we had who I think is a very good property manager there in St. Louis. And we usually, if we see a property, in fact, we were looking at a portfolio last year of like 5 or 6 properties, and I sent him all the addresses. And he kicked one back. He said, "This one I won't manage because the area is very bad." So
Mhm.
that's been helpful. We really rely on them in St. Louis. And you've heard we're going through right now a couple of rehabs there, so those units are vacant. The one that they have had on the rental market had been on there for like 90 days, and it's been tough, but we're making a couple more improvements to that property. We took it off the rental market, and then they said if it's off the market for 30 days, then we can bring it back on and it'll reset the listing. But we're going to do paint and probably flooring
Mhm.
and a couple of things just to make it prettier because it is functional and it did pass occupancy. Um, but the people that are looking at it we're not impressed by it. So we're trying to make it compete better with the other properties in the area. Um, so that's why you know, you talked about having boots on the ground. We're starting to build a team there. We have, like plumbers, roofers, our property manager, and our property manager is fine with me finding other contractors because sometimes they're too busy. It might take them a week or two to get to our place. But I've had another contractor that we work with, and he can get it done faster. So our
Mhm.
property manager is okay with that, which is nice.
That's good. That's good. Awesome. And so if you could share the numbers of your best deal so far to make us jealous.
Yeah, I think it wasn't. I mentioned having challenges last year. So our triplex in St. Joseph, Missouri, we it has three 2-bedroom, 1-bath units. And some of the challenges with that building where it was built as a single family home and somebody divided it up into a triplex.
Mhm.
And there was, when we bought it, there was only one furnace and it controlled all three units, but the person in the bottom unit had the thermostat. So whatever they
Mhm.
set it at was what everybody got.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that was a challenge. So again, I didn't go there and look at it. If I had, I probably would have realized this, but last year we had to put in mini splits, so each unit has its own heating and air conditioning. We spent about $30,000 on the property last year, but um, it's full again, and currently that one brings in uh, let's see, it's about 3,000 $3,000 a month in rent. The mortgage is 900 a month.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so once we take out the property management, the setting aside for CapEx maintenance and vacancy, we usually get deposited into our account about 22 to 2,400 a month. So I would say now that it's all good and up and running, that is our best one to date,
Mhm.
because after all that's said and done, we usually get about 2,200. So we have about 1,300 of cash flow after
Mhm.
we take out, and that's after property management comes out. And then after we take out for those other items, vacancy and all that, then we usually get about 1,900 a month. Then we
Mhm.
pay the mortgage. So it's the positive cash flow is about $1,000 a month for the three units.
That's good. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is now, but it took us a few years to get there, right? And that's one thing that we expected that to happen in the first year, and it didn't. So, like the guys say, the first 5 years are the hardest. We're just getting through that. This is starting year 5 for us. So for
Mhm.
that first property, the 5 years should be up soon, and we'll be just, you know, being able to enjoy that one for what we expected. And so every time you buy a property, I wouldn't say that the first 5 years suck for each property that you buy down the line because you've learned so much, right? So you're going to avoid a lot of the pitfalls
Right.
you faced on that first property. So I think as you go, hopefully we're getting smarter with each purchase and maybe buying a better deal each time. And so, it might not be 5 years, and maybe you're cutting it down to 2 or 3 years, if that. And I mean, it might be a perfect deal from the get since you've gained so much knowledge. But yeah, and we've always expected, a 10% cash on cash return with $200 of positive cash flow per door. And I would say everything that we bought after that triplex has been that,
Hmm.
with the exception of Gary. We knew the Gary property wouldn't perform to those expectations because it was a turnkey. I think the first year was like a 6% return, but I wanted to go there and just have that experience to see, because of Millennial Mike, and we use the same turnkey provider that he bought with in the past. But like you mentioned, it was way different. And say, I think Mike started there 6 or 7 years ago, so the
Right.
profits were better then. But it's still been a good property. It took a couple months to rent, but it's been solid. The tenant's happy and the rent comes in on time. So I think that's worth it. And then after the year, the rent will go up a little bit more and increase your cash on cash return that way.
Hmm. Hmm. What have you learned about yourself during this real estate journey, this second trip?
The second time around,
Yeah.
well, probably not so much what I've learned about myself, but what I've learned about um, having Cynthia as my backup, because she's like, there have been a couple of times, and she'll be honest with you. She'll tell you, I think we should sell all this stuff and take the money and run. But she, she talks sense into me, I should say, and makes me realize, you put like $30,000 into this triplex. Why would you sell it now?
Hmm.
You're going to lose even more if you sell it now. Um, so she's really kept me in the game, I think. And like I've told you about you and the other women investors in our group, you guys are more level headed, I think, for the most part, and you're not going to rush to make crazy decisions just because something's going bad at the moment. But last year was really rough, and she kept me able to keep moving forward and to be positive. Dion's been a really big help for us. He's become a really good friend for us, and his mentorship has meant a lot. Um, you know, it, it's funny because sometimes he'll just check in and say, "Hey, how are the rentals doing?" And I'm like, "You don't want to know how they're going this week because it's really bad." But and the same thing, he always says, "Just wait, just hang in there, and things will turn around." So I I don't know. I have to make this work because I don't have anything,
Hmm. Hmm.
else to rely on. So um, I think together we're stronger, and to have other people in the group, to be able to call, or we've made a bunch of friends just over Zoom, people we haven't met in person yet that really encourage us. And I think starting this channel that we've started, and having our weekly meetings, people are really honest, and they'll talk about all the bad things along with the good things. And it helps to realize that, other people are going through stuff, but they're not quitting. And that's been really helpful.
Right. Because I think we have the expectation of social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, it's like that we are going to get rich in the next year or something like that. And that's the worst thing you can tell to anybody because real estate, realistically, yes, it can make you, like you said, retire or make your retirement better, but it's not gonna be overnight. There's no get rich quick scheme. And if there is, we haven't found it because there is a lot of people investing in real estate and we all have those challenges that come with your own strategy, with your own market, and even out of state. You and I couldn't make it work here in California. So we had to move and look for other options. But that doesn't mean we quit, right? It means that we just buckle down and get up. It's not easy. Like I was talking to Mikey, like it's not easy to get your paycheck and then immediately save your money and then not have lunch outside or not have like go on a trip that you want to go or you're saving for your future self and then you're spending all this money in real estate too. So it's better than not doing it. Like you said, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great point. I think as investors, we start to think differently. Sometimes before this, I used to eat out, have lunch and breakfast out almost every day. And back then, it wasn't too bad. But today, even getting a burger at McDonald's is $20. And I feel really lousy when I do that. And I feel really great when I take my lunch. I'm lazy and I hate to make my lunch every day, but while I'm eating that homemade lunch, I realize, oh, I saved $20 today. That feels pretty good. And, and if I don't make my lunch and I go to work, I'm like, I'm not eating lunch today because it's going to cost me $20. So that part, I feel really guilty about that when I spend anything outside that I don't really have to have,
Mhm.
even crazy stuff like buying a Gatorade or anything, it's like you should have brought water or something. Then
Yeah, I
you'd be
really pick my purchases definitely too. I like traveling, so everything that I have, like every time I don't eat out, like I put money into a vacation bucket or something like that because that's something that I enjoy more so than I don't know, buying a handbag or buying a new dress or yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
You,
no,
go ahead.
go, go ahead. No, I was gonna ask you, how did you find a community one rental at a time?
How did I find them? Like I mentioned, I must have found Zuber back in 2020. I think it was just before COVID started, like probably February. And like I was saying, it just sounded like real estate could really help us. And I was all in. And sometime we'll maybe talk with Cynthia, and she wasn't all in, right? And I was kind of forcing it on her and my son because I felt like this was the way that we were going to be able to have a better retirement. And so they they were a little resistant in the beginning, but then I think when they saw how serious I was about it and I wasn't giving up on the idea that and they would just listen in on whatever I was doing, whatever meetings I was involved in, and things like that, and started to understand the concept. And so now we're constantly talking about deals, and Cynthia's hoping to retire this year, or at least make the work optional for her, and she'll get a little bit more involved in like the office kind of stuff that we need, I guess, to be organized, because her organized and my organized are very different. If she takes over, it will be organized. So, um, yeah. So when I found Zuber in 2020, it led us to, eventually Dion. Dion, I discovered him in some of the chats. He was always commenting on stuff, and I just really resonated with what he was saying, and then found his channel. And um, I think I've mentioned before mentorships we've taken. So we took Zuber's course. We've taken the Brick by Brick Wealth course with Casey. There was one by Ashley Hamilton that we took, and then eventually Dion and Matt. We've taken their courses too. So we spent some money on mentorship, but I think for us, it helped us move forward a little faster. Um, just kind of like the YouTube idea that we talked about earlier, because without YouTube, we would still be kind of struggling. But now that we know all these guys and have met, people like you and Mikey, and there's so many great people in the group doing different things. But something you said earlier about bigger pockets, for a while there, they got away from the beginning investor, right? Just like the guys have said recently, but And sometimes it's discouraging to look at their headlines. I kind of joke about, they have a guest on, he's 13 and has 58 rentals and he's retired. So that kind of stuff is not helpful to me.
Right.
Now that they're circling back around and understanding that we need the help the most getting started in this first year or first 5 years, and they're coming back around to that. But um, Dion and Matt and Zuber always keep that in mind. And sometimes Zuber gets a bit out there, right, with some of his guests and some of those concepts, but he tends to always come back. And I was really glad to see that he started the Q&A session again in school, because I think we need that, exposure to him to keep moving forward. So that's why I try so much to help the community, because he's helped us so much.
Yeah, and Frank is one of the persons also that hosts that accountability call on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. And I host the Fridays out of State Investing, and there's many more calls during the week for one rental at a time, and it's been so helpful just to have somebody there that you can reach out practically almost every day of the week. And if you have any questions, nobody's there to like make fun of you or make you feel like, oh, why didn't you learn that in the beginning? Nobody's like, everybody's just willing to help and willing to refer you to somebody that's in your market or in your community, or even somebody, another creator, like another YouTuber that can help you. And that's why school has been so helpful.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's one thing you don't find out in the real world is people, like people in this community, will help. I've mentioned before, you guys can call me if there's any way I can help with what experience I have. But also, some people have just called just to talk, and that's been really exciting for me because our family and friends are not interested in real estate. For one, they
Mhm.
think you're silly, because if I told them what I went through last year, they're like, why
Why
would
would
you
you do
put
that?
yourself through that? But yeah, in this community, there's no silly questions, no stupid questions, and nobody's, I guess, in the beginning, you would think that some successful investors might like hold back their contractors because they don't want their contractors too busy. If they give you their name, then you're going to give them work and they're not going to be available when I need them, or
Mhm.
whatever it is. Plumbers, lenders, everybody just shares everything. And
Mhm.
these are the people that help me advance. Maybe they can help you advance. And I get especially excited when somebody comes to the group, like the Wednesday call that you mentioned, that's brand new and doesn't understand anything. Those are the people I get excited to help,
Mhm.
and because we were there once too, and we've learned so much, not just about real estate, but about finances in general. There's been a lot of other benefits to help us use our money more wisely, or save money here or there. Some of the guys in the group are really good at points hacking with credit cards and things like that for travel. Some of them fly all around for free because they have points on certain cards. And that's something I didn't know about before. So
Yeah. And it's not just about real estate. I think it's about camaraderie to friendship.
mhm.
Because there's some things like you're like, yeah, I'm gonna get through that, I'm gonna fix that, but you just want to vent too about what's going on and what's happening in your life. And you, like you said, you can't really bend to your friends and your family because they're not in the same journey as you are. And just, calling Frank or asking me questions about sewage line and ADU that I had, it's something that I done before. So I appreciate everybody that's come out with a reassuring comment or just an insightful advice.
Yeah, that was kind of, you were talking about things that I've learned about myself in this journey. I think one of the things that I said in the beginning was, again, when we started the channel, it was to document our journey, to share our mistakes and our lessons and our wins, but just to be open and honest. And it was hard recently for me to do that because the On a couple of calls, we brought up the listing that I mentioned to you earlier that hasn't rented in 3 months. And sometimes you're a little bit nervous because you think people might think, well, you bought in the wrong place or you bought the wrong kind of house or, but when we showed it and they shared it on screen, all we got were suggestions, right? Maybe you could change your listing. Maybe you could put a different picture for the first picture. Maybe you could, if you don't want to adjust the rent, maybe you could do concessions like half a month off or things like that. But nobody ever said, well, you shouldn't have bought that one because it's ugly, or, you know, you shouldn't buy in St. Louis in those neighborhoods or things like that. So that I was a bit nervous about putting it out there in the beginning, but I told myself, this is why I started the channel. So I better put up or shut up, I guess. So now it's easier to share even the bad things because it's going to help somebody.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. It helped me. Okay, Frank, where do you see yourself in 2030, 5 years from now?
Well, hopefully one of us will be retired. I think she's close to it. I think we'll probably be in Washington also because like I said, we're going to sell this house here. We
Mhm.
have enough equity that we might be able to buy something. Actually, one of my relatives is planning on moving with us. So we might be able to buy something together for cash and then not have a mortgage at all.
Mhm.
So that's going to make, Social Security and our portfolio together, we should be able to live pretty comfortably. So that's my goal. I think I'll probably have to work myself for a couple more years, just to make sure that will be okay. But um, again, if we hadn't started, in 2020, things would be looking pretty dismal right now.
Mhm. Mhm. You're gonna go live with Dion? Close to Dion?
Well, Dion is the main one that
Mhm.
was urging me to go that direction, but we have a lot of other friends now. Michelle Meyer is up there,
Mhm.
Anna Kay is there, Curtis PE turned RE is there. Um, Josh and his wife moved from where we are. They used to live here in Monterey and they moved to Washington and bought a duplex at their house hacking, and they're doing good. I think, Dion has talked about house hacking as a way to start your journey. But a few months ago, he started talking about how house hacking could help you in retirement as well. So, ideally it would be a house hack, but I need a little bit of space I like to do things with wood and all that kind of stuff. So I need
Mhm.
someplace to work on projects like a barn or something.
A
So that,
garage, a big garage.
yeah, big garage. That's what we're looking for. So
Mhm.
we'll keep you posted.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Well, Frank, it was so nice to have you here in my channel, and I want to thank you for coming and dropping your little wisdoms nuggets all over. And I hope you come back again so we can keep tabs on you and you can tell us all your stories.
Yeah, I really appreciate the invitation, and anytime you are willing to talk, I am.
Awesome. When you're retired, we'll have more time.
Okay.
Okay, bye everybody.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Oh, don't forget to follow All Guy REI on YouTube.
Thank you. I appreciate it.